Darkcast Network, indie pods with a dark side.
Are you drawn to the dark? Do you find yourself enticed in the forbidden and ominous? Join me, Steph, as I explore all things menacing and malevolent in my podcast, Sinister Story Hour. I discuss true stories of cults and crimes with the occasional urban legend. I also dedicate episodes to missing persons in the United States. And you could be the missing link to provide information and clues that will help to bring them home. Join me every week for a new story. Come on in, sit down, and get ready, because it's story time.
Hi, this is Jenna.
And this is Kelly.
You're listening to ODFM.
This episode is One Dismal Creek from Murder, Part 1.
You got away with murder. Yeah, you got away with a crime. Saw with a cheating.
Dismal Creek. There's a place called Dismal Creek. It doesn't sound like a place you'd really want to go. Like, wow.
Yeah, that sounds very much like some place I don't want to go. Like it's not on my top 10 for vacation right now.
Not, and it won't be in the near future anymore.
Oh, God. All right.
Either.
All right, bring it on me.
All right. So we're going back to the 80s. So it's May 1981. So there's a pair of backpackers. They're from Maine, Susan Ramsay and Robert Mountford Jr., and they're hiking the Appalachian Trail.
Oh, wow.
I mean, yeah. To raise
they're
money.
going to do the whole thing?
I think Robert.
I know people who do that.
Yes. And it's like, what, 2,000 some miles? It's insane. Yeah. Robert, I think, planned to. Susan was just joining him for part of it.
It's like, you do you. I'm just going to do
this little bit.
This one leg.
Exactly. So they're both like 27. They're both social workers and they have a passion for helping others. And they're doing this to raise money for disabled children. So
good for them. I don't really understand
it's
how
like a
backpacking. Okay. I'm like, how does that raise money for? Okay. But cool.
So so their story goes national. They're on national news and then people
donate. Okay.
Yeah. To donate. So,
cool.
So Susan had grown up in Maine and she's this dedicated social worker. She's determined to make the world a better place. Like we all hope to do sometimes. And then
that's a tall order, girl. But okay.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah. Until we get broken down and
get beaten out of you.
Then we're like, never mind. But she's this kind-hearted, adventurous soul who loves hiking. So this is right up her alley. And there's Robert. He grew up in Indiana. And like Susan, he's wanting to support vulnerable people to have a better life. He's trying everything he can do. And they're both, only 27. So they have this rosy outlook.
They're still very young.
You're still not jaded. Yeah. So also into hiking, he's also known for his love of challenging himself physically. And he's known as compassionate. No.
Okay. Good for him.
No.
Can't relate.
He's one of those people. So that's why he's probably doing the whole thing. And she's like, you're crazy. I'm going to do
I'll do a part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. He's compassionate. He's positive. People love being around this guy. So they both sound like really great people, which is dangerous. So since Susan,
which is dangerous. This is why I try to be an asshole. It's safer that way.
It's safer in some respects. Yeah. Since Susan and Robert, they're both in the same profession. They had met through their work and they became friends. Okay. And this is how they soon found they had a love for the outdoor activities. So they hike the trail together because they want to make money to help those in need most. And so I had read this book and I was like, well, are they just coworkers? But why would you agree to spend all these nights with somebody? In the book, they allude to them being also somewhat romantically involved, although Robert had a fiance. So, yeah. So don't know how much that came true, but they also wanted to test their limits by hiking the trail, which reaches over 2,000 miles. So yeah, I did put that in there. Crazy.
Lord.
It's a long ways. I don't know. if they didn't make it the whole way. Let's say that. So Bob starts this hike off on March 31st of 1981. Okay. And other co-workers are coming and meeting up along the way with Bob to help with the walkathon. So they'll walk little portions of it with him, hike for a few days. And then they're like, okay, peace out.
Good luck, man.
So Susan didn't join him till early May. So he'd already been out there for a while. And the pair were given safety instructions by every person imaginable before and during the trek. So like you think of, your parents are constant. So every time they're calling their family, they're like, hey, be sure you're being careful. Make sure you got enough water, all that kind of stuff. So
I'm sure. Yeah.
But the beauty and the warmth of the mountains and its people, they're like, there's no danger here. We find no danger in the woods. What?
You're in wildlife, man. There's danger.
I'm less afraid of wildlife myself than other people. Yeah. Honestly.
Or we'd have a wildlife podcast. But we don't.
Exactly, but we don't. So hikers on the trail, they often look out for one another somewhat, and they often chat with each other hiking on the trail. So it's not like there's not a lot of people. There's quite a lot of people out there.
Okay.
And there's these log books along the way where they leave messages for each other.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, they'll log the weather, trail conditions, and wildlife sightings. So it's a way to warn people of what they might be coming upon. And it's a way to leave your mark. Like you sign it, say, hey, I was here.
Yep. Yeah. Here I was.
Here I was again. Here I am again on my own.
Also very 80s, but I think that came later.
80s. Yeah.
I think that was post 81. Anyway.
That was a lot of hair too. I just think of Tawny Katane rolling around on that. Rolling around on the Camaros or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Or Trans Ams. Maybe it was Trans Ams. Hot. Okay. So along the Appalachian Trail, there's several shelters that are provided for hikers. And we're not talking like cabins. They're basically like 2 log walls, a log floor, and, a little overhang. So it's almost like, think of a bus shelter, natural bus shelter.
What? Okay.
Those bus shelters. It's just so they can lay down their sleeping bags and sleep in there. So not great shelter. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's really,
but better than getting poured on, I guess.
I guess. Okay.
Yeah. So they can sleep in them. They can stop for rest or just get out of the weather for a bit because it does rain a lot.
Okay.
For Kentucky and all that fun stuff. So they tend to also be great meeting points for social interaction. So people swap info. They'll have some beers together.
Oh, okay.
So there's also logbooks at each of these shelters as well. And I think rangers help maintain all of that kind of stuff. So,
oh, okay.
A hiker met them at the Wapiti 2 shelter. Wapiti.
Wapiti.
I love that word. Okay. Wapiti. Near Virginia on May 18th of 1981.
Okay.
So this shelter, it sits off of the trail near Dismal Creek. So
okay. Lovely name.
Yes.
Someone was in a bad mood when they named it.
I know, but they're fucking dismal. The explorers were like,
right. It's so dismal here. This is Dismal Creek.
It's so rainy and dismal. And apparently there's Dismal Falls too. I don't know how a falls could be dismal, but somebody was grumpy.
Yeah.
So they're expected to show up at the next expected checkpoint within a few days. So after this meeting. So when this person saw them on May 18th, 1981, that ends up being the last time they are seen alive.
Oh, and everything was fine at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. There was no hint of anything bad, but when they didn't arrive at their next checkpoint, family and friends begin to wonder if something's off because at every checkpoint they would call into family, they would do all that kind of stuff. But where they were supposed to show up was a hostel. Sometimes a lot of these hikers, they'll stop at hostels just to shower and stuff and get a good night's rest before going back on hiking or go to hotels. So at this hostel, they were to meet with friends, and Susan was supposed to call her home, but hadn't. And at first, they're not terribly concerned because Bob's like this big outdoorsman and Susan's really skilled at hiking. So they're thinking, well, maybe they just took an off trail, just a couple days extra. So when May 27th rolls around, so this is quite a ways, like almost a week later.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's got to be like a week? And they still haven't heard from them?
Yeah. So Susan had been expected back at work by this time. She was only going to hike for, half a month, maybe 3 weeks. And she promised, I'm going to be back by this time. And it was a new job. So she wasn't going to miss it.
Oh, so she wasn't going to mess that up either. Yeah.
The families of the pair began to reach out to one another. So they're comparing information, and they finally make the call to call him in as missing.
Okay. Someone's got to go look for them.
Yeah, something
happened.
Something happened. So rangers are sent to the trail. They are going to go searching, and they go to the last place Susan and Bob were seen. They go down there. A team of 5 different rescue squads are deployed. So they didn't go small. They were going big.
Wow.
And a team of volunteers on horseback. So they go and interview each hiker that's going along the trail. And hikers start mentioning to the searchers how they had come upon this creepy, weird shit along the trail. They were notes that had been like nailed to trees and stuff along the trail with kind of bizarre, incoherent messages that seemed threatening. And it would mention violence and paranoia. And they were each signed the 95-pounder. Which I'm like, is that a burger? Is that just the thin man?
The 95-pounder?
95-pounder. That's who they were signed from. And it was like all along the trail before and after the Wapiti shelter. So
the 90, that's not very
scary.
No.
The
300-pounder, I'd be a little more nervous.
Exactly.
225, anything like that. But the 95-pounder, I'm like.
That's why I was like, that sounds like a burger challenge.
I feel like I could take them. I don't know. Okay.
I could sit on him and it would be over, but So people are saying there are these really weird messages along the way. So maybe there's something to do with that. And a lot of people had passed through the Wapiti 2 shelter after Bob and Susan were there, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But searchers go back and they're like, okay, we're going to look at this with more scrutiny. Mm-hmm. And they realized that this shelter had been recently built. So the floors would have been pretty good in there. But they noticed that somebody had smudged charcoal all over the floors, like from a fire, from a burnt stick.
Okay.
And so they start wiping that away, and they notice all these dark red stains that had soaked through the boards.
So this charcoal was covering up the dark red stains.
So they're like, oh, okay. And they look around for the logbook. That's also missing.
The logbook is gone.
Logbook is gone. That's a little strange.
That's also strange.
Yeah. So then they're looking at that, taking photos. Then one volunteer searchers, they come running, pale faced, like they seen some shit. And they're like, okay, I got to tell you something. I found something. I found a sleeping bag. Okay. Not a big deal, but there's a foot sticking out of it. There's a fucking foot sticking out of the sleeping bag. And it
didn't look like someone was just sleeping in it with their foot out.
No.
Okay. I didn't think so. I figured with that reaction, it didn't look like that.
No. So he walks all the authorities back where he found it. And the sleeping bag, it was laid between a couple of trees with leaves and dirt just kind of loosely scattered on it.
Okay.
And piled on it. And on top of that were 2 sticks laid purposely pointing like an arrow. So you could tell it was positioned there.
Oh, so not like I thought maybe when you said 2 sticks, it would be like a cross, like a grave. But
like an arrow.
Like
arrow. Like an arrow. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was pointing in a direction. They're like, okay, that's weird. And yeah, the lower legs are still sticking out of the sleeping bag.
Okay.
It had long blue knee socks, and the body had been stuffed head first into the sleeping bag.
Okay.
When they unzipped it, they find a plastic trash bag over the head and down the body of a young woman. So they're like, okay, this could be Susan.
Oh, no.
She had no other clothing except for some white panties and the socks. And it's obvious she'd been badly beaten. She looked like she had stab wounds in her chest. And they're like, okay, seal this shit off. So they seal the area off, Photos are taken from every vantage point they can. They even brought dogs in to aid with the search.
Yeah.
And they still hadn't come across Bob's body.
Did they head in the direction of the arrow?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Start looking in the direction of the arrow. So they find other things. They find a brown bag with an empty bottle, a can of Coke, and a rum bottle. So someone's drinking Jackson Coke or something.
All right.
They didn't know if it's related at all or just random trash that's in the area, but they collect everything they can. So the female body, it's brought in. And as darkness falls, most of the searchers are like just calling it a day because you can't, what are you going to do in the pitch black? Yeah. Some amongst them wondered if not finding Bob meant that maybe he could have been Susan's murderer. So,
right. Okay. He's not there. So where is he? He's either a victim or the suspect.
Something. So, and Susan's poor family was brought in to identify the body. Apparently it was pretty hard to identify because she'd been beaten up and had decayed quite a bit by that time.
God,
even though it only been about a week, a little over a week, but
outside in the elements.
Yeah. It's pretty hot. Police and the Criminal Investigation Division, they comb the area where Susan's body was found. Oh, sounds so creepy. Dark red stains are all over the place. Trees, leaves, bushes, rocks covered in what they think is blood. Yeah. So they're thinking, okay, Susan obviously put up a huge fight and blood was everywhere. It was quite a ways off the path. So it wasn't like a lot of people were going back to this area.
Okay.
So nobody had seen that until they went searching. So, and then they found more things around the area. So there's a box of 22 caliber cartridges, nylon cord, a roll of tape, and a pack of condoms.
Wow, that's a really weird party kit.
Right.
Wow. Okay.
Not your usual party kit.
Plus the rum and Coke. So
rum and Coke. I mean, yeah.
The rum and Coke. Huh. That's a odd.
Yeah. That's not my kind of party, but And so search dogs are brought in for further search in the hopes more evidence or possibly Bob could be found. Yeah.
Where's Bob?
Find Bob.
What about Bob?
Oh, what about Bob? Old movie reference. Okay, so one dog, Bambi, but
the dog's name is Bambi?
The dog's name is Bambi, but it's a boy. It's boy Bambi. Wait, and the movie one was
in
too.
The movie it was a boy too. Yeah, I always thought it was kind of a strange name for a boy, but whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So boy Bambi, he's just a pup in training.
Oh.
But this pup is a good one. So he actually turns his interest to a particular bush and sets of bushes and dirt near it. So investigators come over and they're like, yeah, that looks like freshly moved dirt. It has been tampered with. So they sweep away the topsoil and they come across some fabric. And they're like, okay, let's keep pulling. Mm-hmm. Material's a sleeping bag.
Oh boy.
And the more they uncover it, they see there's something in there.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So again, they unzip it. And same thing, bag. Once they unzip it all, the bag has a trash bag covering a body.
Okay.
Same shit. This bag had been tightly tied around the neck of the victim with nylon cord.
Oh.
With the mouth open. So they had wrapped it around so that the mouth,
to keep
the jaw
mouth
had
open?
Yeah.
Oh.
Creepy. Below the victim's left eye, there looked to be what they thought at the time could be a gunshot wound, but it's hard to tell. And to those who found the body, they'd been looking at these pictures of Bob for a long time. And they're like, yeah, for sure. This is Bob. It's obvious. Bob. This body, because it had been buried under the soil, was not decaying hardly at all. So it was very easy to identify him. Yeah.
Okay.
The body's sent in for autopsy and the area search continues because they just keep finding more shit. So they unearth more items like more tape, a mill file. Do you remember having to use those files like I took industrial arts, I think in middle school.
Like a metal file, like a long metal. Yeah. Okay.
So weird. A crescent wrench and a pair of pliers. So they're like, was this left by previous hikers?
Weird.
I know.
This is a lot of odd stuff.
Yeah. But what they're hoping to find, they knew Susan and Bob both had cameras with them.
Oh.
And they're like, if we can find these cameras, maybe there'll be some clues. And Bob was known to take his own kind of logbook where he would, a diary where he's writing it every day.
Okay. So maybe
like
he
a journal.
He had that with him somewhere.
So they're like, somewhere there's got to be the stuff. But the one crazy thing,
mention if they had met some weird person along the way,
right?
Or, hey, this new guy joined us or something. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And he's that type. Like every person he would meet along the way, he'd write about them, put their name down, because he's
that would
super
be
friendly,
incredibly helpful.
It'd be so helpful. So they're like religiously looking for this. One crazy thing that was found. So investigators, they're
crazier than what we've already found.
Yeah. Well, they start realizing there's things hidden inside hollow logs, inside of things around the place. Like someone took time to do shit here. It's weird. So this investigator looks inside this hollow log and he's like, the fuck is this? He pulls out magazine pages. It's like roll, kind of like a scroll. And it's nude centerfolds that have been stashed in the log. And they're like, what the fuck? Yeah.
You never know when you're out walking the Appalachian Trail and you really,
you need some porn.
Have an urge for some porn. Yeah. So
I was like, is this guy's like site that he stays at? Like this killer's that he goes to a lot, maybe? I don't know. But they also find on the same log are another pair of those sticks in an arrow direction. And the first time they didn't really pay too much attention. So the second time they find one, this guy's like, oh, okay, I'm going to figure out where. And so he figures out exactly like the degree these are pointing in. And he realizes everything that they had found lay in a direction, a straight line where each of these were pointing. Everything. And the sticks that were on top of this log pointed straight to where Susan's body had been found. So it's like they were messing with them on a little bit. Like, okay, we're leaving a clue, but
it's so weird.
It's really weird.
This is like a weird horror film. This doesn't seem very
horrible. It's
normal,
like
realistic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. He goes back to view where the sticks had been on Susan's body. They had photos of it all and stuff. So he sees where that would lead him, and it pointed towards a dead tree stump, which was weird.
Okay.
So he goes to that. On top of the stump is another makeshift arrow. It's so weird. It's like a scavenger hunt.
Yeah.
And this one points to an area where there's loose leaves with sticks and all that kind of stuff. So he starts digging there. And then he finds a canteen. Yeah, I know. It's just bizarre. And a Texas catheter. I'm not sure if Texas is the brand. Probably a catheter from a hospital. Like,
what?
I know. Yeah. And they're just like, is someone fucking with us?
Yeah.
They don't know whether someone's just leaving random shit to take up their time or what.
Right.
But at the end of the day,
cleaning out their car and leaving it in random spots. Like, what?
I lost my catheter. What? So at the end of the day, they're like, okay, they bring in this huge amount of inventory. And they're finding things like a large spike nail. They did find 2 bloodstained books with bloody thumbprints on them among a bunch of other random items. So of course those are brought in. And then they get excited when they come across Susan's Pentax camera found, and it's buried deep in a stump. Like had they not looked in all these stumps, they'd have been screwed. And so they get excited, they pull it out, but the film had been ripped out of it. And they find the film in the stump and it was obviously exposed. So I know. So the Wapiti 2 logbook. So as they're going around, they find that. They find it under a rock. But
this is so
weird.
It's
so weird. This guy spent so much time. They find it under the rock, but the last 2 pages of entries had been ripped out. Of course they had. They're probably in some other log.
It's so frustrating.
It's so frustrating. Then they find Bob's camera. It's still intact. It still has film in it. So police are like, okay, finally. And they noticed that
please
pattern.
Let the last thing be like a selfie. Please. Please.
It was so hard to take selfies with those kind of cameras back then. To know whether you were in view or if you're blurry. So all of Susan's belongings had been methodically hidden in a straight line out from her gravesite, they noticed.
Okay.
And Bob's items had been hidden in an expanding circle from his gravesite. So like, what the fuck does this mean? Does this
what
mean
the
something?
hell?
Yeah, very odd. So meanwhile, the autopsies come back. They find that Susan had died from stabbings, being stabbed to death, while Bob had died from 3 gunshot wounds to his head of a 22. And apparently,
was that the shells that were found?
They did find some 22 shells, but apparently 22s are pretty small, and so they kind of shatter inside when they hit something. So they're hard to do ballistics testing on. So it's obvious from the trajectory of the bullet wounds, they could tell it was obviously he'd been laying on his side, probably sleeping when he'd been shot.
Oh, God. Okay.
And items at the site yielded like a half dozen prints. So they found so many prints. One of the bloody books had a perfect thumbprint in blood. So that was the best that they found. Film from Bob's camera, it had a ton of images of other hikers. And so they went about trying to identify these different hikers. Because apparently, you know, he would take up pictures with every hiker he came across, you know, just,
Did he take a picture with his own killer? Because that's creepy.
That's super creepy. He didn't, but Susan might have. Then, I know, a couple comes forward. They could have passed as twins or siblings of Bob and Susan. Like, it was creepy. Cops are like, this is...
So, like, the girl looked like Susan and the guy looked like Bob?
And they didn't know each other, but they came forward. They heard about all this shit going on. They had been hiking the trail, but they were farther ahead than Bob and Susan.
People who look just like them.
Isn't that weird?
Who were heading in the same direction.
Yeah.
But we're a couple days ahead. This is weird. Right. This is weird.
So weird. So I know it sounds like a movie because it's too weird to be true. But
this is all too weird to be true.
True. So they had heard about the murders, of course, and they're discussing it with others at a hostel that they stayed at. The female, her name is Peggy. Actually, some of these names have been changed. So her real name isn't Peggy. I didn't find what their real names were, but she told the others that she'd been stalked along the trail by an ex-boyfriend who she was sure was trying to kill her. And he had left all these threatening notes along the trail for her to find.
What?
And she talked about how he always called himself the 95 pounder. So all those notes had been from him trying to intimidate her along the way.
Dude, that dude was creepy. It's a good thing she got out of that relationship because that was...
Yeah. Danger.
Was there a reason for the 95 pounder?
You know, it never said in anything I read.
Because I feel like that's a story we should hear.
I know.
There's got to be some backstory to that.
Maybe he's a big fisherman and he likes catching big fish, or he's just a real thin guy. I don't know. But the man's name is Ned Shires. Again, not a real name. Couldn't find what that was. But hoping they found their man, police they get Ned. They're like, we need to talk to you, man.
We got to talk to Ned.
We got to talk to Ned.
Ned kill Susan and Bob thinking it was Peggy and her new boyfriend.
Yep. Yeah. And that's exactly what they thought. They're like, well, God, they look so much alike. How easy would it be for him to think that was them and revenge it?
Bizarre. Okay.
So they uncover Ned's print, or they compared Ned's prints. And he had been in the service, so they had him anyway. But they compared to the prints at the crime scene, but they don't match any of them. So they're wondering if he had some accomplices or he's smart enough to get his prints everywhere. Or I don't know.
Wow.
But then they get a call, and Ned comes into the local department, and he had left them a packet of photos to help identify various hikers along the way, because he had been doing what Peggy had accused him of and was stalking her.
Did they also tell him to stop?
I doubt it. They're probably like, dude, she's not into you. But yeah, back then,
she's just not that into you. It's time to move on, babe.
It's time to move on, Ned. No, and I don't think they always took it so seriously back then. It does help narrow down the field of suspects. He actually was trying to help.
All right.
So now it's June 7th. I mean, it's been a while.
Wow. Okay.
A couple weeks after the murders. A policeman down in Myrtle Beach. I think it's South Carolina, North Carolina.
Yeah. Myrtle Beach is South Carolina. Yeah.
South Carolina. He's driving his normal route. Yeah. This is a ways away from Virginia. He's driving his normal route and he comes across something suspicious. He drives by a truck and it looks like it's been attempted to be concealed within like some brush and stuff off the road. So he stops, gets out, inspects it closer. He notices there's no plates on the vehicle. So, okay, weird. So he looks in the window. He's trying to see the VIN number.
Mm-hmm.
It had been covered by a piece of paper. So he's like, okay, there's some bullshit going on in here.
Yeah, right. It's a little too coincidental now.
Yeah. So he calls in, gets authorization to gain entry into the truck. Okay. So he doesn't find anything too worrisome in the cab. No drugs, alcohol, no guns. So, but there was a scrap of paper sticking out of the ashtray. So he opens it and reads it. And it says, quote, "This boy and girl have been so nice to me. You would too if it meant your neck. All the money they gave me is almost gone. It's going to be a real shame when the time comes to get rid of them. He sold parts of the truck and gave me all his hunting guns and knives and fishing stuff. His girlfriend gave me her car, so it's time I dump his truck and take her car. It's bad that I have to get rid of him. His girlfriend is so pretty and nice. I will be far away before truck and people are found." Unquote.
What?
Right. This cop's like, what the fuck did I just find? You know?
Right.
So he takes the note with him. He's like, this sounds like someone confessing to at least stealing, but possibly killing people.
And maybe kidnapping and murder.
Mm-hmm. So he takes a note with him and they trace the VIN on the truck because he'd taken the piece of paper off so he could see.
Yeah.
This truck, the name comes back to a guy named Randall Lee Smith out of Harrisburg, Virginia.
Okay.
So this particular cop, he had recently seen an article in the paper about people that had been killed in Virginia, about the murders of the two hikers, because it was national news. It's a big deal. And he was like, interesting. So he decides, okay, well, this guy's from Virginia. I'm going to make a call. So he calls police in Virginia and they're like, whoa, what is this new evidence, this note? So they're really excited. They put Ned Shears on the back burner. Shires. Yeah. They're like, okay, dude, you don't seem so rough now. So they go to head to Randall's known address.
Okay.
In Virginia. No one's home. Neighbors tell him, yeah, his mom, Loretta, she works at the local hospital. She's not going to be home till late in the evening. And police are thinking, yeah, remember that catheter we found?
Oh, medical equipment.
Weird. Medical stuff. Interesting that his mom is a nurse. So
yeah, right. Okay.
So they catch up with Loretta. They ask her, okay, yeah, where's Randall? She said, she's like, they describe her as this, kind of beat down old lady, even though she was only in her 50s, but she was a smoker, heavy smoker.
Only in her 50s.
Yeah, but
oh my God,
life hadn't done her kindly.
Gotcha. Okay.
So they catch up to her. She said Randall had left her home on June 1st for a welding job in Connecticut, and she hadn't heard from him since. And she says, yeah, go search the Randall's thing. I don't care. She lets him into his room. They didn't know if they'd find anything because he said he has a totally clean record. He hasn't been
It's just
arrested for anything. He has this weird note.
They found his truck and there's a weird note in it.
Yeah. So they don't find anything much of interest in his bedroom. So they go on a search in the basement, and this basement's weird. So you can only access it from the outside, and it sounds a little bit more like a root cellar type of place.
Okay. Or like a storm cellar, something like that.
Except they do have like their washer dryer and stuff down there. But there they come across a metal cabinet with a newish blue sleeping bag, a rain cape, and a roll of red cloth. So the sleeping bag catches their attention because Susan's parents had told them that Susan had just bought this new sleeping bag that was blue for the trip. And the one she had been found in wasn't her own sleeping bag. It was a ratty old green one.
Okay. Interesting.
So, yeah.
Oh.
And they dig further. They find a plastic bucket stuffed into a tight corner, and there's clothing soaking in the water. So they pull the clothing out, and it's a pair of jeans with dark red stains on them.
Whatever they were using wasn't OxyClean or anything because it didn't.
It wasn't working. Huh? No. And I guess Randall's just going to stuff it there and leave it. I don't know.
All right. They also let it soak till it comes out. I'm not going to add any kind of like tide or anything.
The whole thing's just going to dissolve someday.
Okay. Someday.
They also find a t-shirt and a pair of cutoffs stuffed behind a workbench, and they're also stained in several places. Like, why not just get rid of them? I don't know. But
Right.
Unfortunately, there's
why not soak them all in water?
Right.
I know. Okay.
It's just like, these are too far. God, I'm going to stuff them back here and forget about them.
Those were his favorite pair of jeans, and that's why he really wanted those
he
to come back.
Gross. By the time he came back, they'd be moldy.
They show off my butt, and I really wanted to get
Unfortunately, they don't have any prints of Randall's on file, so they would have to get Randall's prints off of him or off of something else. So also unfortunate, it seems Randall had wiped his truck clean of prints before abandoning it. Weird.
That always amazes me. Like I feel like I don't know how I could possibly think of all the different combinations of places I could have touched my car.
Right. Everything was wiped clean. But they did find a deck of playing cards between the seats. And they were hoping to get prints off of those.
Ooh, yeah.
But
you can't play with a deck of cards and not
touch them all.
Yeah, right.
But nope, those had been all wiped clean as well.
Oh, come on.
Isn't that weird?
Do they just dissolve after time or something?
That's what I wonder. Because how do you wipe each one of those?
Could you imagine 52 times wiping both sides? Like I'd get halfway through the deck and go, whatever.
Fuck it. I'm burning these.
Right. I don't have that patience.
Yeah. So photos of Randall, they're circulated and given to the media in a bid to find him, like all around, especially in Myrtle Beach. And they go back to the truck to take some dirt samples of it. These guys are so desperate. They're hoping to match samples from the forest in Virginia where Bob and Susan were killed. But the long road trip got rid of any dust or dirt it would have had on it. So now the FBI is involved. It's gotten pretty big. They decide to do a sweep of Myrtle Beach's area motels and the beaches.
Okay.
They decide he must have seen the pictures and reports and hiked off into the wilderness. So they start a huge manhunt for him. There's also swamps. There's all sorts of shit around there. So
okay.
They decide they got to find him. So they're cutting through heavy brush. They're getting scratched and scraped by bushes. And then even one of them gets bit by a snake. I mean, it's not easy. Place. And they come across a garbage bag that's left out in the wild, like dense forest. So this has got to be him.
Right. It didn't like blow.
Right. It's a bag.
Yeah.
At least he was bagging his trash.
It was very, very odd that it was.
Right. I can't believe they could find this wherever they did.
Right.
So by this time it's June 22nd. They're desperate to find this guy. He's running. It seems like he's guilty. They've kind of forgotten all about whatever that other guy's name was. Ned. Yeah.
Ned. It's a very 80s name.
It's such an 80s name. So during the search of their woods, they crest a small hill and they see what looks like a human figure resting against an old tree. And they're trying to be quiet to approach him.
Yeah.
But one of the guys steps on a stick. Typical movie scene.
Yep. Absolutely. Loud stick too, right?
Loud stick. The man stands up and runs.
Oh boy.
So they're like, okay, this got to be him. They run after him, but the dude quickly tires because he's been out there a while. They catch him. He's gaunt. He's got a beard. He looks.
Was he 95 pounds? Oh no, that was the other guy.
He's probably less now. He's probably like 90. He looks to be between 25 and 30 years old. He's covered in bug bites and welts on every part of his exposed skin.
Oh God.
His hair and beard are matted with sand and his clothing is caked with dirt. This dude's been out there for a while.
Wow.
So they ask him if his name is Randall Lee Smith. And he opens his cracked lips and he's got all these yellow teeth. And the man responds, I don't know. I don't know.
Could be.
Maybe.
What's it to you?
Yeah.
Wow.
They looked through his makeshift campsite. He'd set up at that tree where they'd seen him.
Okay.
It was basic, and it's a wonder he lasted as long as he had out in the wild. So they take him to the hospital. He's treated for his hundreds of bug bites. It sounded so gross. He was pussy. This poor guy. I shouldn't feel bad for him. This guy. But he was severely dehydrated.
Whew.
So after he'd been released, they take him to the police station where he's printed and they feed him. And they said he's like ravenous, like bad. So they clean him up. And it's clear he's Randall Lee Smith.
Okay. So whether he admits it or not, they're like, that's it.
We know it's you. Don't know if you know it's you, but they try to question him.
He had a lot of bug bites.
He had so many bug bites. He probably had all the diseases. Probably worms too.
Gross.
They try to question him, but he demands a lawyer. And meanwhile, the prints they had been compared, and the authorities were excited to find them a match to those found at the crime scene, especially that
I'm
bloody
surprised
thumbprint.
once his fingers were all swollen and pussy that they could get a print off of it.
Right.
And it was a match to the bloody thumbprint from the book.
Yep. However, the other evidence was somewhat inconclusive, like the stained clothing at his home was too deteriorated at the time to get a decent analysis on. And they didn't have the great technology we do with the DNA and all that stuff. So they could only determine it was human blood, but they couldn't tell what blood type it was or anything.
They couldn't even do a type. Wow.
No.
Okay.
So the blood print and blood on the book was type B, but that wasn't Susan's. Her type was O negative. Okay. However,
and the clothes that they found in the basement, they were his clothes. They weren't like female clothes or Susan's clothes.
They think so. It was kind of conjecture, so they didn't say. But Bob's blood type was type B, so it could have been his blood on the book. Randall was extradited to Virginia, where he would be held for trial. He's sent in for mental evaluation, where he did quite poorly.
Oh, shocked.
Yeah. He seemed like he truly could not remember who he was. He was emotionless, had no memories. So they decided to run him for further testing to see if he's truly incompetent to stand trial. And finally, doctors decide, okay, yeah, he's intelligent enough. He's capable of participating in necessary legal procedures, and that he is just using selective self-serving memory because he's doing that because they're able to figure out that is true because he has these long, fluid conversations with his mom on the phone when he doesn't think anyone's listening to them. He tells them, I don't know who she is. Who are you talking about, Loretta? But then he would call her and be like, talking about everything. So they were like, hey, dumbass, did you not know you're in jail?
We record everything. Oh my God.
Everything.
Right.
So on November 2nd of 1981, his preliminary hearing for the murder of Susan took place. There was a ranger that came forward. She had come upon Susan at the Wapiti 2 shelter, and she testified that a male who called himself Billy Joe was with her.
Okay.
And that Randall was that man. Like she recognized him. She said that she had taken a photo of the two of them together, and that quote unquote Billy Joe was acting strangely, and Bob wasn't there at the time. Susan had said she's waiting for him to return from a little off-trail hike he'd gone on. Okay. And she said this Billy Joe had an old ratty green sleeping bag with him. Like the one that Susan was buried in. Yeah. She said she and the other ranger that she was with thought it was strange that this Billy Joe didn't have any other camping gear with him because everybody was always carrying these giant backpacks.
Right. Yeah. There's no hotels like right there in the area.
Yeah,
you got to bring all your supplies.
Right. I think she had that actual photo and was able to show him with Susan.
My God.
So on November 30th, the preliminary hearing for Bob's case gets underway. They did them separately because it was hard for them to prove that he had killed or was around both of them.
Okay.
So they discussed the blood found at the Wapiti 2 shelter was type B, same as Bob's. However, unlike Susan, Bob hadn't been seen with this Billy Joe, like I said, which was Randall. So the defense team is trying to say that the bloody clothing found in the basement could have been placed there by someone else because the basement was accessible from outside, and that probably he had never met Bob, so he wouldn't have killed Bob.
But someone just randomly hid bloody clothes in someone else's basement.
And it just happened to be the guy.
To be somebody who's now being accused of murder.
Exactly.
I'm sure there was a good legal reason for why they separated them, but I feel like two people who had been together that both got killed, it makes more sense to be like, well,
they were together.
Right. They're both dead now.
Yeah.
He was known to be with one. He was physically seen with the other. I don't know. But whatever. I know. I'm not a legal person. So, okay.
Exactly. So even with the lack of all the concrete evidence, though, both cases are sent to a grand jury. So good. And they're going to be tried as one case there.
Good. Okay.
And authorities get lucky when they get a call from a farmer in Virginia saying that his kids had been out walking. They're picking up cans and they find a .22 caliber revolver.
Ooh.
They're like,
but they don't find that every day.
Oh, good. No. So the gun is very rusted. It looked like it had been exposed to weather for a long time. So it's like
Mhm.
somebody threw it out their truck as they drove by. So
Yeah.
no blood's found on the weapon because it's been outside forever. No prints either. And
course not.
ballistics couldn't be compared because the bullets
Because of that
had
bullet type.
disintegrated.
Ah!
Yeah. So the hearings just continue on and on and on like this. Like each little shred of evidence they're trying, it's like, but can you prove that was there? Can you prove that was his? So during
But
this
after
time,
a while, there's got to be like the sheer amount of circumstantial evidence has got to be
Right.
like this has got to be like the luckiest son of a bitch ever.
yeah,
Or
you kind of go with the obvious, right? So
Right.
during this time, Randall's attorneys realized that it's likely he's going to be found guilty and that it's in his best interest to get a plea bargain.
yeah.
So they agree upon second-degree murder with consecutive 15-year terms for a total of 30-year prison sentence.
Okay.
Not much.
No.
But it's either that or he might get tried for murder. And he
might get nothing.
So he's like, sure.
Yeah.
So he pleads guilty.
Okay.
In a weird jail cell confession.
Oh,
this dude's creepy. He makes me think of the guy that's in the cell next to Hannibal Lecter. That's
okay.
like whispering creepy shit.
Yeah. Okay.
He is telling a cellmate about his crimes while he refers to himself as in third person as Smith, which is his last name. It's bizarre. And he says something like Smith had felt like Bob had tried to get in his head because Bob's this counselor and had tried to talk to Randall like one of his clients.
Like maybe he could help him.
Yep. God. Smith had decided to sneak up at night and watch the couple. He was hoping to watch the two have sex, but they didn't. And this is how he's telling this guy, like Smith did all this, not him, but Smith.
Like a TV show.
Yeah. So they went to sleep and Bob had started snoring in a chuckling sort of way, probably laughing at getting inside Smith's head.
So his snoring was laugh sleep. Okay.
Yeah, laugh sleep. He's laughing at Randall. Then he had to go shoot that guy and shut him up forever because he's laughing at him even in his dreams.
Wow.
The girl was nicer, but she'd also seen into his head. She too was a counselor. So
boy.
He didn't want to kill her. He just wanted to shame her and make her pay, is what he said. So he said Smith had killed her because she made him. It's all her fault.
Oh, did she now?
Yeah.
She made him.
Yeah. She fought back and she wouldn't lay down, no matter how much he told her to. He said they'd been laying on the floor of the Wapiti 2 shelter, shot the man 3 times, and the girl got up screaming and started to run. Rude.
Wow. How could she? Yeah.
So he had to chase her down. And he said he'd wanted her to lay down and take her clothes off, but she refused.
Again, shocking.
Shocking. He said she was wild and strong and knocked Smith down. So Smith picked up a long stick and hit her, but she kept fighting back. And finally, he took out the buck knife he carried in his belt and stabbed her. She kept screaming, but why?
Oh, my God.
He tells the guy the fight continued until Smith found a metal rod and beat her head until she stopped fighting back.
Oh, God. Wow.
Smith says she was still alive, but Smith took off her clothes and did stuff to her. But when she stopped moving, he put some clothes back on her. He ran away, changed his clothes because the blood was sticky, and he came back, carried them off in the woods, and put debris over them. He had tied Randall's mouth open with rope to keep him from spouting off more, even though the man was dead.
Wow.
He said he'd never felt so strong or high.
Wow.
Fucking creepy. That's why that guy reminds me of like psychotic. Wow. To refer to himself. Like he couldn't even admit it was himself. You know,
no, right.
So Randall served 15 years of his 30-year sentence.
What?
And yep.
I thought it was back to back. It wasn't? It was
supposed to be. Yep.
Oh, God.
15 years. He was released in 1996 at the age of 43. And then he wore an ankle bracelet. He had been monitored for another 10 years until about 2006. God. And this is not the end of his story, as we will discover in part 2.
Shit, are you serious?
According to an article on Grunge, there may have been 13 known murders on the Appalachian Trail since 1974, with the 1981 murders of Robert Mountford Jr. and Laura Susan Ramsay being among the most notorious.
Shit.
Yeah. Okay. So sources will be given on the next episode.
All right.
As well as on our website.
Woo,
but
I can't wait.
That's
Holy crap. I'm
Part
so
one.
glad that I don't actually have to wait.
You don't have
Sorry,
to wait.
guys. Sorry, everybody else.
That's the only 13 that relates to it. But I was like, this guy is creepy enough. He's his own 13. Yeah.
Damn. Okay.
Okay. Thanks for joining us for another episode of ODFM. ODFM is hosted by Kelly DeVries and Jenna Swanson. Editing and production is by Kelly DeVries. Theme music is by Eric Swanson. For images from each episode and more, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok with the handle ODFM Podcast. For video episodes, subscribe to our YouTube channel by searching for ODFM Podcast. If you are looking for more content, chances at prizes and more, become a Patreon fan at patreon.com/ODFM Podcast. Subscribing to our Patreon is a great way to help us get better equipment, and our big goal is to hire an editor someday, so your contribution could really make a difference. If you can't give monthly, there are other ways you can help. Share us with your true crime friends. Word of mouth goes a long way. Or you can give us a one-time contribution through buymeacoffee.com/ODFM Podcast. We appreciate your support, and someday we hope to make ODFM our main jobs with your help.